I guess we'll start with introductions. I'm Timur. Recently moved to Calgary in July. Work for MRG Concerts in downtown Calgary. We are a national concert promotion company. So we have offices in Vancouver, Calgary, Winnipeg, and Toronto.
My name's Adam Schnitzer. I'm an agent at the Feldman Agency. I've been involved in some form or another in the live careers of Always, Bad Bad Not Good, Charlotte Cardin, etc. I personally represent bands like Weaves, Partner, Common Holly, among others.
Hi, I'm Sarah. I work at Paquin Artist Agency in Toronto. We have offices in Winnipeg and Vancouver as well. I work with a lot of punk rock bands, but Paquin does a lot of folk rock and roll as well. So, yeah. Done.
Cool. Well, I guess I'll start with a question because I'm moderating. So how did you both get into the industry? That's probably a good place to start so people get to know you a bit.
So I started about 15 years ago when nobody would book my band when I was underage.
What band was that?
I don't want to tell you because you can't. I prefer if you don't search
I'm the
it.
moderator. So.
We shall not talk about my old band. But so I was underage. The rest of my band was, and we couldn't find anywhere to play in Toronto. We found one club that was willing to book us. We paid like an exuberant amount of money to do an all-ages show. But in order to fill it up, we found a network of other bands throughout the Toronto area who were also underage. And we created a kind of monthly night, which ended up being quite successful. By the end of it, we'd have like 500 kids out. And that kind of got me started. It got me a taste for the industry, and I made connections that way, and eventually used those connections to get a job. I had a brief stint at Ticketmaster, so I got to learn about the ticketing side of things, which is very cool. And I recommend people, try and understand that side of the industry. And then later on, I moved over to Feldman, and that's where I'm at today.
I grew up in a small town, and there's nothing to do except for, play in a band, but I have no musical talent, so I decided to promote shows instead. And I promoted from the age of 14 until I moved to Toronto at 18, and I kept doing it here. And then I got hired as the receptionist at a booking agency, actually, and then moved up to assistant, and recently just moved up to an agent position.
I got a phone call coming. Cool. Okay, so I guess in the spirit of the panel, we're obviously discussing touring in Canada. So, in your professional opinions, what are the things that some of like an up and coming band that maybe doesn't have representation should be, like the checklist that they should kind of be going through in order to prepare themselves for taking that step? Because obviously, on one hand, you don't just like start playing music and get an agent. Mm-hmm. There's obviously some steps there. If you were 3 shows in, what tips or pointers or things to look for would you say specifically for like a developing band?
Tip would be definitely just support your local scene. Wherever you live, go out to shows, meet those promoters, support bands that like maybe you've never heard of before, check out whatever you can, and just like network that way. Because if you make friends with a band, maybe they'll take your band on tour, maybe they'll have you guys play the next show that they have in your town. Just if promoters see you out and hustling all the time, they're going to be more likely to put you on a bill for them.
I agree with that point. As a promoter.
Yeah, I'd say let us find you. We're always trying to find new music. We're always like, we have our ear to the ground. We know what's happening in the local scene. And if your band is selling out shows in its home city, like we'll know about it. And the problem is like a lot of times I get a lot of unsolicited emails from acts that haven't done the groundwork. There's nothing much I can add if you aren't drawing in your own city. So I'd say develop your fan base first. And that's, and start getting a local following, and then an agent will come naturally.
I agree. I think it is definitely important. It is like 90% of this job is networking. My specific question though is like what things should they be like like obviously there's like the overarching like the macro of like support your local music scene, you know, making sure you're filling up rooms that you're you know that are close to you, quote unquote, or like regionally close to you. You know, in I know in like Southern Ontario, it's like, you know, you start selling out the St. Catherineses, the Hamiltons, the Londons, the Oshawas, maybe the Guelphs.
If you're selling out all of those.
If you're
I'm
feeling
calling.
no, if you're feeling a little feisty, you know, go to Guelph. But you know, it's like away from like the typical kind of thing. Like, what kind of things, like, you know, let's say you got to that point and you know, in Alberta, you're doing decent shows in like, I don't know, Okotoks, Calgary, Airdrie, and Red Deer. Is there like certain things that you guys are looking for from like a organizational standpoint from these bands? Like not just, you know, okay, yeah, the tickets are there, but is there something that you as an agent, and you know, I precursor to all this, these are two of like the better people I know in Toronto, so it's like, and we joke around a lot. If you guys have us on Facebook, you saw that we were like, you know, we're gonna try to throw each other's wheels off on this, but you know, like realistically, like it is something that is really important. That like I actually would love to hear that too. Like what do you guys look for when you're like auditing these bands, for lack of a better word, and trying to what's that checklist you're kind of going through away from, you know, okay, this is a physical ticket sale in a specific you know, primary secondary market?
I would say like building a team around your band is really important. Having a PR person, a manager in place. It's not necessary, but those really help us to then like take a look at you seriously and want to work with you, because you have that backing of a PR person who's then getting you a lot of press that can help those tours that we're working our asses off for, you know, to set up for you.
A band plan. If you guys come in with a band plan, I'll love you. It's amazing, because a lot of bands come in and they don't have they don't have the structure immediately to know, you know,
what's a band plan?
I'll get there. So
I don't know what that is.
You know, if you have an outlook to a general outlook of what the next 12 to 16 to 24 months are going to look like, you know, basically what releases you have planned, if you want to get singles out there, where you want to tour, maybe some festival goals, and then that way we can complement the plan and work together and reach those goals. Yeah, I mean, that's basically step one, I'd say, in you know, executing a successful live career.
I agree. Yeah.
Do we have any questions on the specifically to what was just spoken about? Because I lost my train.
He needs time to think.
Yeah.
Yes. For the most part, I think that like every agent maybe has a preferred genre that they work with, but for me, it's like if you're a good band, you're a good band, and good music is good music. It's all about the money too when it really comes down to it. Like if you can sell tickets, doesn't matter what kind of music you play, unless you're like a complete asshole band promoting like really terrible things.
I don't think genre really matters. I think if you have an audience, that's all that, you know, we're looking out for. I mean, my favorite example of this right now is Jeremy Dutcher, an artist we represent at the Feldman Agency, and he sings in a language that only about 80 people speak, and yet he's very successful, and it, you know, people seem to attach themselves to it and find meaning in it. And only 80 people speak the language, and it's, you know, he's selling out theaters countrywide. So, yeah, it's a good example.
Yeah, speaking to that point, am I allowed saying my thoughts on the matter?
No.
No? Okay. I will say, just as a complete precursor, it's like I think, maybe correct me if I'm wrong, but you know, the assumption that like people at the level and I'm not saying like we're on this pedestal like in the industry or anything, but we're basically, I would argue, and knowing both of you, like we're all kind of like music nerds, and we're all like mine for kind of information. So on our end specifically, we can kind of see through a lot of it. If you come to us and you're like, hey, these are our plans for like social media growth. These are like when you have your band plan kind of being built, social media growth, Spotify reach, etc. It's like a lot of those things can be paid for and bumped up, and we kind of, I know at least on my side, we're mining that information pretty much on a daily basis. So to decide whether or not we're gonna actually physically book the tour or not. So one piece of advice I would give is just be humble. Don't be patient, and those good things will come. It's just but have those kind of those morals that you kind of as your starting ground, and then build from there. And I think like someone like Jeremy Dutcher is a great example of it's like, yeah, that is a very unique, obviously like a unique genre, I guess we can call it that. But it's like you want to tell your story, and you're the one telling your story at the end of the day. So it's like be able to control that and be able to speak to it, and really own it as an artist, and all these things will slowly come to you, regardless of the niche factor of that specific artist as well. So, and eventually people will jump in, but it's just like there's probably in this room we have 100. No, it doesn't feel like 100. No. I exaggerated. But there's like a bunch of artists here that all are obviously chasing the same thing. So it's like, what is that? What is that golden key that will help open it up? Is there a golden key?
Release music and let it percolate. I think get a few songs out there and then build slowly. A lot of acts tend to release a few songs, want to hit the road and do 40 dates. And, we were talking about this last night. It's not the way to do it anymore. Back in the day, maybe, but now what we're seeing is people slowly building followings online in different pockets and different markets. Use your Spotify data. It says which cities you have a fan base, and that's where you should pay attention to and start building your, playing the right shows there. Finding the right bills, and that all comes back to a band plan, right? So you realize which markets are your strongest, and then you take it from there.
The golden ticket is talent. If you're not talented, just it's not going to happen. Sorry to say.
Everyone's talented in their own special way, Sarah. Come on.
I worked with, there's a band called Bike Thieves from Toronto that I recently just started. I think you were talking to them too, actually. They're awesome, but I've had them open for a lot of the bands that I actually work with. And so having them come out and play a set in support of a band that I work with, that catches my attention. I get the chance to see them live. And then they're kind of band that I'm watching right now being like, I want to sign that eventually. And you just kind of watch the progress. You see when they have new music, what their plan is, like Adam's talking about. But I think that, bringing a band out to support the acts that we already work with is a really, good way for us to be able to keep an eye and see what they're like live.
A big company success story at Feldman is Daniel Caesar. So he didn't play a live show till 2 years after he released his music. So 2 EPs in, he played one show in Toronto, and that got the buzz going. And that's an example of how the new way of approaching your live show is just letting things sit. So he gained fans by releasing music throughout 2 years, and then played one show that was very impactful. It was a sold-out show, and then that spot
Mod Club?
It was Mod Club, yeah. So that's about a 500 cap venue. It sold out within a couple days. And then afterwards, another year went by, and they released a really good record. And again, not many live shows. I think they did maybe 4 or 5 markets after that. And then afterwards, when they released the record, he had 2 EPs under his belt. They did a full-on tour that was very successful, but they were able to cultivate demand because they stayed away from the market. So, I mean, that's kind of the perfect storm of right place, right time, smart marketing, right plays, and on top of it all, a great record. But I love going back to that story because it's a great example of how it's done.
Speaking of that, two-part question. When you are developing in your home region, how many shows, let's say in a month, is too much? This is a softball, like, underhand question because I already know the answer to it. But from a promoter standpoint, I can tell you that there's nothing that irritates me more than bands playing too much. But what is that? What is that magic time?
Like even one a month is
Yeah.
too much. Like one every 3 months is
Yeah.
kind of maybe normal if you're very, very new. And as you get bigger and more fans, then you play less and less because you need those fans to come out to every show. And honestly, there's nothing more frustrating than adding a band to a bill and then seeing that they have another show announced in the same market.
In the same week.
Yeah. Same week, same month, like never announce 2 shows in the same market at the same time.
Don't play that much in your own home market. The problem is like, it becomes tempting because if you're, I work with an act called Common Holly, and she's from Montreal, and she's got a good fan base out there, but we get offers for her to support acts all the time, like 3 to 4 times a month, and we just keep having to say no because eventually you're just if everyone's seeing you 3 to 4 times a month, it takes away from the cachet of the artist. So I'd say less is more in this case.
Yeah, I think like from a promoter standpoint, it's like, we always look at it like when we're booking, like, or at least when I have like some bigger shows coming through, I'll always think of like, let's say the band that we're adding that, obviously because like, I think part of it is like there is an angle with the promoter where yes, you're developing yourself, but you're developing yourself through opening other shows as well, right? Those, and you're taking a hit maybe financially to then, tap into a specific audience. And for us, it's like at least on my end, I look at it as like if a local singer-songwriter or band has 50 people that will eyes closed support them. It's like I don't want that 50 people cut in half, but with another show or cut into thirds. I want that focus to be that show. And the thing is, I think as a I wouldn't consider myself like a Greg Curtis or a Sean from like Sled Island or any of that stuff. Like I'm not that visible in this scene yet. Those people are the real gatekeepers, and give credit where credit's due for the work that they've been doing. But even still, it's there's a lot of shows that I get hit up all the time. When we're doing like, because like our company focuses on touring. Like that's our bread and butter is booking the stretch from Toronto to Vancouver, and it's like we get hit up for pretty much every show. We'll get 5 or 6 super hungry locals that will be like jumping over each other, and half of them I look at and I'm like, oh, this band's like fantastic. And we were talking about this, I think we were talking about this last night at the thing, but it's like you're like, oh, this band's so great. They're writing such good music, and they're like, oh, they asked to play. Okay, cool. They're playing 3 days later. Yeah. The conversation's over, right? And it's like if I go to someone like Adam or Sarah, the immediate answer is X over the name.
Make people want to listen. Like, make people want to come out to your shows, and to do that is just play less. If people like your music, they'll want to come see you. But if you're playing every other week, it takes away from demand. And like this stems back to like, using a local support on a touring band that's headlining your market. As much as you think that could be a great opportunity, and sometimes it is if it's the right act, it doesn't always move the needle. Just because you're playing for a much larger act doesn't necessarily mean those fans are listening. So I would say pick and choose.
Bread and butter, man. What the fuck?
Also, I don't know if your fans are going to be willing to pay a $30 ticket to go see you if they can see you for $15 down the street next week.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. It's like if you're quote unquote fans or well wishers, family are when you're really building. Because the thing is, like, I think if we're like a new band, at least in my experience in Toronto, like, you'd have like a cool band just hit. Everyone's kind of talking about them. They have probably about like I'd say like 3 to 5 shows to really like prove themselves. And if they do those 3 to 5 shows in the first month, it's going to be really hard. If they do those 3 to 5 shows over a year, I feel like they usually start gaining a bit of momentum. Like, can you speak to that? Like, is that an actual thing? Like, at least on my end, I see that, where it's like, if they're really stretching it out and they have that plan. But yeah.
Yeah, that combined. I mean, I feel like I've touched on this already, but that combined with releasing music and music that hits is like the way to do it. So I'm actually curious, like, out of curiosity, are you guys like artists, aspiring musicians, or do you want to work in the industry? Let's turn it on to the crowd.
As a moderator, I agree. Please start asking questions.
Hands up if you're an artist.
Oh shit.
And how many of you want to work in the industry? Just like, agent, manager, promoter. On that side of things, yeah. No, nobody?
My guy.
Yeah. And yeah.
In your opinion, what's the role of local support on a show? I book at a venue, and I find sometimes agents will be like, hey, we want this person, who's likely another artist they represent, which I understand makes sense. But then, on the same token, that support act might really not have much of a draw for the show as much as maybe they're just a very talented artist. Added into who's a very talented maybe draw in the space of each, and then add a lot of value to the show and more people for the headliner. So as an agent, what's your mindset?
I mean, local support is super important. It also helps build up the local scene. Like, that's what we're about. But it's really hard right now. There's so many bands on the road at one time. So if like we know that there's another band, and we do this like in not just internally at our agency, but with other agencies as well, you don't want to compete with those other shows. So combining those bills when you're in the same market at the same time is actually more beneficial for the venues as well. But I mean, ideally having a couple local support artists that like can bring people out that know the area, that are like, sought after in that town is the most beneficial. It's just not always going to happen. If you have another show down the road, same genre, you're looking for 2 other local support, and then you're just splitting those fans in half.
I think it depends on what you're using the local support for. So if your show is tanking, local support's not going to help, and especially if it's a high ticket price. If you want to make a cool bill with a similar-minded band that's coming from out of town, and the ticket price is around the same of what that local would normally charge, I think it's like a value added then, right? It's a cool bill. But I think if you've got like a headliner from out of town who's charging $45 a ticket, and just because you have a cool band that usually sells tickets in Calgary, and you think adding to the bill is going to salvage a show, I always think that's just a Band-Aid solution. So it really depends on what you're using the support for.
Let's go, Matt.
You have to sell your soul.
I love when bands understand the promoting side of it. It is so helpful when you're working with a band and they have that experience of how fucking hard it is to be a promoter sometimes, and how hard it is and how much they have to hustle to sell a show. Like, some bands think that they can just post it on Facebook and that's like, okay, promoted. But as a promoter, like, that is not helping anything. So I love when bands go out there and try to get that other experience as well.
What are we what are you talking about here? Like,
Are you not listening?
I know, but like, no, like I'm saying, wheels are coming off.
Yeah.
No, but like, what do you mean by like what are you looking for in that regard? Like, what would be like the wow factor for you? Like, if you were like you added a band, let's say with Weaves, and what would you like to see that you wouldn't necessarily want to ask from like a band that's really trying to cut their teeth and like start getting on your radar?
What, like musically, or from like a
like
promotional
from a
standpoint?
promotional standpoint, like maybe
They have like they tap into their fan base, so they're well engaged with all their fans, and they're able to get messaging across on Instagram and Facebook and Twitter, and it makes a difference. a lot of bands, I mean, they don't utilize that as well as they should. And you can see a difference if a band's promoting their stuff and their fans are engaged. You'll see a spike in ticket jump. Sorry, you'll see a spike in ticket sales. Yeah.
And just being smart with like when you're playing shows versus when you're releasing music, like have something to back it up. When you're asking to be support on a show, be like, we have a new single coming out or we have a new video coming out, so we will help by pushing this, and whatever you're doing to premiere that video or music, you're also pushing that show too. Yeah, go.
I have been doing this for 10 years. I don't think I've opened a single EPK. I prefer just like a direct, like, this is what we're doing really quick. This is the link. These are, a quick blurb. Like I wouldn't say, like, I think like having an EPK when you're like going into a meeting and part of like that band plan, I think is a good idea. But from, if you're looking to like do like regional dates, let's say with a company like ours, it's like we're just looking at face value. We don't need something like splashy.
Well, it's also like you have the internet, right? So if a band sends me an EPK, I just look them up on Facebook. If it looks interesting, then I'm probably going to find the Bandcamp link rather than open up that EPK, to be quite honest. But if it does look cool, I will go check it out. It's just so easy to check them out on Facebook, see if you have any friends that like the band, or like, get a general sense of whether you'll like it or not.
If I've heard of you before and I see you come in, then I'll open it. So if the groundwork's done, I'll take a deeper dive. But usually, yeah, there's so many that come in. Some are great, but it's hard to keep track of all of them.
So would you say that like the unsolicited EPK is something that you're not really looking for it? Because I know there's a few agencies, not the ones you guys work at, but I know one agency in Canada, right on their website, it's like no unsolicited materials.
Yeah.
Please and thank you.
Honestly, if you have to chase an agent, you're not ready for an agent. And I think that's the general rule. Do what you're doing. Yeah. Don't send emails off. And like, we get so many. It's just really hard. We already have so much to do work-wise. If you're ready for a band or for an agent, then we already know about you. That's kind of bottom line.
Or like if you are going to, make sure you cater it to the person you're sending it to. The amount of times I've gotten like something like a Russian polka band, which is great, but not much I can do with, you know what I mean?
I'd book it.
Exactly. Well, maybe I should have opened that EPK. I think a breakdown of, where you've played, how many tickets you've sold, what Spotify playlist you're on, how many plays you have on the DSPs, video, like a link to video, maybe a single. That's it.
Honesty too. Don't fluff those numbers.
Yeah.
Like I need to stress that. Do not fluff those numbers especially when you're reaching out to people like them.
Yeah, seriously, tickets, like number of tickets you can sell is so helpful. If you just give us that information, that's perfect. And invite us out to a show. If you have a show coming up, it doesn't hurt to just be like, hey, we're playing here. I have you on the list in case you can swing by. Super simple.
Hey.
It helps so much if it's really well done. I work with a band called Life in Vacuum, and they have an incredible audio tree session that I sell to every promoter, and it's just like you see what they're doing live and what they're capable of and what it sounds like, and it works every time.
That band is also just incredible, though.
They're so good, yeah. Check them out.
They just riff really hard. So. We had a couple more questions. We'll take here and then there. Sorry. Yeah, I just forgot where the second.
Totally. So I think you need to get out there and play to practice, but don't actively, those are bills. Get on bills with friends and stuff. Like that shouldn't be the thing you're like plugging out to the universe. That should be just you getting on like a local night and playing. That's not to build an audience. That's to, build your sound and become a good live band. The minute you feel confident and the minute you have some recorded music, that's when you start playing the right shows and like advertising that to your fan base.
Oh, sorry.
No, he's right.
I'm really messing this one up.
That's good. Go for it. Yeah. Totally. Not really on our end. I think if they have a manager, then that's where that comes in. I work with so many bands that just tour manage themselves. It's just, there is no other person tour managing. And then when you get to a bigger level, that's when, I think bands usually find it pretty easily themselves.
Yeah, I just book the shows. I hope they figure out everything else. I hope they figure out how to get there.
I think it is about being prepared, and like I think something that they've touched on quite a bit is like, obviously you're building your story, you're building your audience, etc. But it's like a lot of those things you can't really like force them, right? And those things will, I think, at least on my end, from what I see, they come naturally. There's a lot of bands who would be like, oh yeah, they just don't have a TM. That's strange. But it's like they can do that internally. It's to a point where I think like a lot of bands start hiring on some different, like away from management and agent, like for those like more like day of show, like production side, those are hiring like their drum techs, etc. when they really need it. And I think like pushing those just under like the guise of like, professionals, you're probably like better to just keep that money. And if you can do it yourself, and it's like, I think something like tour management learning how to like settle shows, learning how to advance shows, those are I think really important things that I feel like a lot of bands may sometimes skip. And at least on the local side, it's like, understanding that is like I think is super important to the development. I don't know if you guys want to speak to that. But.
Yeah, the best way to learn is to fuck up, honestly. So you go out there, you try it out, you make mistakes, and then don't make them again. That's the way to do it. Yeah, and then slowly you learn the ropes, and then when you're ready to pass the puck off to someone else, that's when you hire someone, right?
Or just take your friends out, have them help you. Just you want anybody that you can stand to be in a van with, take them.
Actually, so it really depends. It comes down to your band plan. So if you want to play, I find Q1's a great time to tour if you don't want to play those markets in the summertime. You have festivals planned for that summer, so you got to think 12 months ahead. Because if you're playing Calgary and Edmonton in January, it's odds are you probably won't get those festivals in June or July because you're just in the market. But if that's not a part of your strategy, I think Q1's a great time to tour because it's not as
dangerous time to tour.
Dangerous time to tour, yes, but there's not as competition. There's not as many shows happening, so there'd be more attention on your specific show. I think the most crowded time to tour is like October, November. I mean, every band and their uncle's out on the road, right? So I think touring in Q1, as long as you're not looking to play the same markets in the festivals, is a great time.
No, it's true. And there's not as many festivals happening in that time. Touring around festivals is so hard because all of those bands playing those festivals are trying to tour around it to and from wherever they are. So it's just trying to avoid that traffic. It works out really well in Q1.
Yeah, I'm saying October, November already of 2019. I know dates are already starting to fall off at venues. It's like impossible to book shows right now in every city, even Calgary. Yeah. I hold the calendar for the Vogue Theatre in Vancouver, and I think we're at like 13th hold right now on some dates, which is hilarious. It's just funny. It's just haha, you know. We got any other cues?
Oh yeah, I work with so many bands that I'm helping develop right now that like, and I guess in the punk scene, they've just been doing the DIY thing for a long time, and I love them so much that I am, you know, they're not selling out yet, but I'm trying to build them to that level. So yeah, I take on a lot of development acts and try to help out with that.
I'll keep close tabs. I like to make sure a proper team's in place so we can help all of us elevate at the same time. But if there's an act that is just like at the start of everything and they don't have a proper infrastructure in place, that I'll still be involved. It really depends on what else is going on around them. Yeah, almost immediately. You got to sell out the Commonwealth first, and then you could take the band on the road.
Skip the States, go to Europe. That's what I'll say. It's too prohibitive cost-wise if you're like just starting to cut your teeth. I feel like, at least in my experience with bands that I know, bands that are friends, you know, that P2 visa is very, very, very hard.
Pain in the ass to get, and it costs money, and you need to have routed dates in order to get it, blah, blah, blah. Go to Europe. Yeah. Europe is great. They treat bands amazingly. They actually go support the bands that they've never heard of, and you can play like shitty squat shows, and that you get put up in, you have accommodations, they feed you, and you actually make decent money because they give it all to touring bands.
Europe's a great place to tour, so.
I mean, just getting to know, like, find bands that are over there that are similar to your sound or that you are fans of, and message them. Send them, like, your links. Just be like, hey, we're hoping to, like, be in Europe. Are you guys playing? Can we hop on any show? Like, try to network that way and get, like, as much help as you possibly can from other bands that are over there.
I would say, at least from my perspective and, like, from a networking standpoint, is, like, go to things like this where you have people from, like, out of the country as well. And I think, like, you know, conferences and summits and whatever other, you know, word you want to use for a collection of music industry people coming into town. Like, a lot of people, you know, as much as we're maybe not approachable while we're on email, I think in person we're always willing to help. I don't know if you guys want to speak to that, but I feel that way. Like, I can't always respond to every email, but, like, if someone, like, corners me, I'm usually more than happy to, you know, lay down my opinions on this or that. But yeah, like I know I went to a conference in PEI, and you know, just, you know, talking to bands there, and, you know, that were like the whole thing at Music PEI is like they do like export ready, so it's bands from PEI that like can tour either nationally, regionally, or internationally, and it's a way of like promoting that. And so, like, all these bands from PEI are, like, taking these meetings, and you're having all these great conversations with them. And, like, yeah, there's a bunch of people from, you know, across the pond and even from, like, Australia that were, like, giving information. And so I think, like, you know, coming to these kinds of things and, you know, really making yourself, you know, I guess, like, available in conversation, I think will help. So, you know, I think, you know, there's always, like, in every scene there are those gatekeepers who can kind of, you know, put you in the right direction. Like, as much as we're, like, you know, hell and brimstone right now, and, like, kind of, like, being, like, negative about how to, like, you know, don't play shows, you know, like, don't, you know, have a plan, spend a lot of money, drain your savings account. Like, at the end of the day, you know, I think a common theme for all three of us is, like, we just get really excited to see artists, like, develop. And I think that's why we're in the business we're in. I'm just, like, speaking on your behalf. Sorry, buddy. But, you know, I think that's what really keeps us kind of going, right? You know, I remember, at least on my end, being in Southern Ontario and seeing, like, bands like the Dirty Nil and Single Mothers and who else, even like to an extent like the Arkells kind of exploding. Those were like really exciting times. And I think like, yeah, it's just like you got to be out there, you got to be visible, you got to treat people. It is a business at the end of the day, but I don't know, maybe you guys want to talk to that a bit, but it is like you want to treat it like a business but still be approachable, still be excited about what you're doing. And like we obviously want to see everyone kind of develop in the right way. But
he's right about the like going to conferences and showcases. I was at the same showcase PEI, and I signed a band from Australia. So now I'm helping them in North America. Whereas like if I hadn't gone and they hadn't sent someone there, I wouldn't have figured out. But now I can help them with those dates that they have no idea who to reach out to about here.
I think another thing is pairing up with like-minded bands. They're in the same level, but in a different area. To take it back to Canada, it's like some acts are doing really well out west, and some bands are doing really well out east, but not the other way around. So if you're trying to break into the west and you already have an audience in the east, pair up with that band, and then you could support them on their strong side, and then you do the vice versa. And you could do the same thing with Europe, right?
I would say don't reach out to the atmospheric level. Bands like like if I feel like usually on my end like
same size. I feel like
same
size.
size.
You can reach out to those acts that have the same type in the same level as you are somewhere else. Then odds are they'll listen, right? Because if you have something to offer them, then they'll for sure.
They're doing the same thing you're doing. They're trying to, so it's like there's a commonality or like common ground, I would say. But I would say like 80% of the shows that are a $30 over ticket, most of the time don't have local bands playing on it. So it's kind of it would be like a redundant thing to ask. And like usually the promoters will, the ones that like the artists from like from a regional standpoint, it's like when we are looking eventually for a band for like a much larger show. Like a Palace, Mac Hall, Mac Ballroom like size. Usually we'll go back to the inventory of artists that we've worked with at the Commonwealth or at the Palomino or whatever venue downtown. So it's like we on our end that's what we're looking for. Is like help us on the small shows, and when the opportunity's there for the bigger show, we will put your name forward. And that's where that whole thing kind of ties back in about like treating like a business and treating.
Well, engage with them on social media, too. Like, if there's another band that you like, share their album through your band page. Like, if they release something, share it, tag them. Like, make sure that you're supporting them, and it's, like, in public. You're helping them promote, so they're going to be more likely to, like, hey, this band keeps, like, sharing our shit. We're going to check them out and see what they're about. And then you can start a conversation that way. And then when you do email them, like, out of the blue, they're going to know your name from Facebook or Instagram or wherever and, actually want to listen to your band. Post about it. Say, like, where do you want us to play? I like that method. Okay. Yeah, just see where, like, people that are sharing your stuff, or, like, if you can see something public that someone shared, be like, where are they from? Like, do some digging that way. But, like, Twitter is really good to be like, hey, where do you want to see us? We're going on tour. Where should we play? And just seeing what, comes up.
For a tour? Buying on to tours?
No, I hate that shit. Don't pay to play. Yeah, ever.
I'm not opposed to.
Of course you are.
No.
Yeah,
No,
of
no,
course
okay,
you
let me-
are.
let me- No. Here's the thing. Correct me if I'm wrong. It's like I'm not saying. Oh, it's not like like a supernova type kind of setup. I'm saying like let's say you have a cool show. Let's say I don't know. I'm not saying like indie rock. I'm saying like it's just more in like the punk metal and hip hop world. It's like if a local artist really wants to get on a specific show, it's like you're looking for draw, right? So what's the problem with being creative and giving them like a lift on each ticket, and then they prove that they can sell tickets?
No.
Anyway, I do it all the time. Sorry.
Like, there's nothing wrong with giving them a bunch of tickets to sell, but there shouldn't be any consequences if you don't sell those tickets. Like
I'm not
that,
saying there's a consequence on mine.
You should never pay anything if
Yeah.
you can't sell.
Yeah,
Like,
don't pay it out of your
give
pocket.
you a bunch of tickets and sell them to your friends. That's fine, but like that's not. Yeah.
That's I think that makes sense. Buying onto a tour makes no sense.
Yeah, the problem is you're going to be paying like $6,000 to play these shows, and guaranteed like zero fans come out of it.
I would.
It won't move the needle enough for you to pay money to do it.
And you should be making money if you're
Yeah.
touring. You should make it, not spend it.
Yeah. Yeah, that's terrifying. $6,000 is a lot of money.
What tour was it?
Yeah. Please tell me on the side, and I'll put them on the next hip hop show.
So yeah, they just went up with a second Bud stage this morning, which is the amphitheater in Toronto. 16,000. So they just sold out the first one. Yeah, I mean, look, it was. I feel like it was a part. I can't speak to the band strategy because I don't work with them, but as like from an outsider perspective, I thought it was really well executed. I mean, they have a strong back catalog. They hadn't played in a long time. And then they came back and just did 4 shows in Toronto last year, and they blew them out really, really quickly in small clubs. So, that's putting a feeler out there, and clearly demand was there. And then they stayed away again. So, yeah, I mean, that kind of it's a full circle to what I guess we're talking about earlier. But, yeah, they listen, they have a body of work that people love. And obviously their fans are still engaged, but on top of that, they haven't played in so many years, and you could see that, the rabid response. It was amazing to see.
No, just like a band like that can do whatever they want. Yeah, they have enough fans. They know it's gonna work out well for them. So.
That venue that they sold out, 16,000 tickets in like 2 days. 2 days, I think they sold it out. So, yeah, that's spicy. That's real spicy. Yeah, try to get to that level. That's what I'll say. And then you'll tour all you want.
I mean, if you only have 5 fans on Facebook, you're not really doing much by sending it out to those 5 people. I mean, they might get intrigued by it, but unless you have those numbers, it really doesn't have any impact whatsoever.
I saw it with one band, and that you and Adam worked on. Not this Adam, other Adam. I remember when like Single Mothers was first coming out, because like they put out a record and then just broke up. Like they put out the 7-inch, played I think like 2 shows, one with Touche Amore in Hamilton, and then like another one in London, and just stopped playing, and just like would just like put out material that they had done previously. And that's like, it's actually a joke now. It's like on their bio. It's like we broke up in 2009 and been playing shows ever since. That's like their whole thing. But I remember that was like lightning in a bottle with that band when they first kind of came down. But
and they still had numbers to support that. Like they're not Alexis on Fire size at that point, but they still had a fan base.
And they had like certain key kind of influencers that they became friends with in other bands, specifically Jeremy from Touche Amore, that really helped them out with that. But yeah, that was one example I can name off the top of my head where it was just like out of nowhere, but they were in a band, and you couldn't even book them if you wanted to. And then they played a show without Drew. Yeah, they started playing shows without their singer. So I think one show I saw was like it was just like instrumental, and then like the bass player would scream every now and again, and I was like, this is strange. I just want to hear the songs. Like, come on.
I mean, getting on like Spotify playlists and stuff like that really helps if you can. Compilations, like any buds that are doing a compilation on Bandcamp, even like just getting your music out there to as many people as possible by like using those methods with other bands from those areas on it helps.
I find that the DSPs are pretty engaged in the local music scene, and odds are, I mean, they go out to shows as well, and you could start up a conversation, and they can get your music out there on regional playlists, which is a good idea. I mean, they actively promote hometown talent, which is great to see. But that's kind of how that's how we've seen the word get out there.
I think it's worth it. Like, how else are you going to get on those stations? And campus radio is a great way to get fans and build fan bases in other cities. So yeah, totally worth it.
Yeah, support your local radio station.
Yes.
Plural. I'm from St. Catharines, and our radio station actually lost its funding. So we're one of the only cities with a major university that doesn't have a properly funded radio station, and that's definitely hurt the music community in that city. So supporting those efforts, specifically like CKUA and CJSW in Calgary, do what you can as an artist to give back to those stations, because they're extremely important to the vibrancy. And I'm not saying that because there might be someone from those stations here, but I genuinely mean that as a promoter. They are valuable assets and great people in the community that don't get enough recognition. So.